We just saw two of the worst unemployment reports in the history of the United States, and in fact, in the history of the world. And it might not be over yet. And one thing I want to talk about today is if you are forced into a situation where you have to reduce your staff, how can you go about thinking about it? In 2006, 2 years before the credit crisis peak, really the peak of fear where Lehman Brothers went down, the housing market was already starting to turn down. In 2004 and 2005, we had hired hundreds of people working for the top 5 home builder in the United States in anticipation of some very big years to come, just like we had been doing in 2001 and 2 and 3 and 4. And in 2006, really, that's when we saw the big cracks come. The first quarter, our sales were way off from what we had expected. And all of these folks that we had made offers to, all these folks that have started, we didn't have work for them. And they continued that way into 2007 and early 2008, where every time we reduced staff, the market would take another turn down, especially as mortgage credit just kept tightening and tightening. It didn't all happen over time. The credit crisis, for those of us that worked in real estate and finance, it was a 4-year ugly downturn. And I can remember after the first round of layoffs, and I don't mean to sound curt when I say this, but the first round of layoffs was not terribly difficult. We were making decisions on people who weren't performing as it was. These are folks that probably weren't good fits for the organization in the first place, that if we were in a normal environment might lose their job just from a performance standpoint. So that first round of layoffs in most companies, if it's a small layoff, if it's not 40-50% of your staff, it's 10%, 15% of your staff, the decisions aren't as tough. But when we got into 2007 and late 2007, specifically early 2008, we were on our third round of reductions. And I was to the point as an executive where I had to make some decisions on offices going away, which meant all of the managers had to leave as well. And I told those managers that we were saying goodbye to, I told them first, and then I brought all of my managers together who were staying with me. And I remember this, it was a powerful moment. It was a very emotional moment for me. I told them, look, this is a street fight. This is as ugly as it gets. It's us versus our competition on who's going to survive at this point. And the questions were very personal. The managers I was meeting with, are we at risk? Are we going to lose our job? And I had to tell them, I'm not sure I can keep a job. I'm not sure our CEO can't guarantee he will have a job in a year if we don't take decisive action, because revenue is plummeting across the entire industry and our expenses are too high. That's exactly how bankruptcy happens. And so one thing I wanted to make sure that they understood is we might not be out of this. This might get worse. And if it gets worse, you need to understand that you have to have the strongest possible team. And I made sure to tell them that our CEO allowed me to choose which managers I kept, and I wanted them to choose who they kept on their staff, because these were very hard decisions at this point. And what the analogy that I use to help them think through it is, if you had to walk down a very dark alley and you could only bring a handful of friends, which friends would you bring? If you knew you were walking into a street fight, who would you bring? Would you bring your oldest friends, or would you bring your toughest friends, the friends that could help you get through the alley? And the reason why I told that story, and the reason I was very specific on who they would bring, is often managers feel like they owe it to their most tenured employees when they go into a staff reduction to keep them on board, kind of last in, last out type of thinking. And in many cases, your most tenured people are going to be some of the people that you want until the very end. They're experienced, they have tenure for a good reason. Obviously they've performed over the years, they've impressed you, and they're great trainers, they're great stewards of your culture. But there's cases where your most tenured person is not the person that you would keep. There might be someone in your office that you hired 4 months ago that has absolutely redefined what a good job looks like to you. And you might have some people that are very tenured, but they haven't bothered to train themselves. They haven't bothered to skill up. And the skills that were successful for them 5, 10, 15 years ago are no longer prevalent. Picture a marketing person who understood how to put a good ad in a newspaper and never really taught themselves anything about social media marketing. How are they going to help you in the future? And so I was clear with that group that I wanted them to choose who they had, but they needed to think very closely because they had seen some of their peers lose their jobs. They had just seen offices shut down. And if they wanted to be a manager whose office stayed open, they had better bring their absolute best talent they could possibly bring. Nothing else matters. No, not relationships, not tenure. If it's going to be tough, who are you bringing with you to make sure that your office succeeds? And I think these are, we came out of that, when we came out of that downturn, we came out with the strongest team I ever had. I ever had before it. I never had a stronger team after it. By the time we started hiring, the folks we had were all people that I would go through a street fight with in a second. And so, as a leader, the way to think about it, help your team understand that it could be worse. Don't get your mindset stuck on, this is just a temporary thing, we're going to get through this. Think, how strong of a team do I need to have if it does get worse? The second thing I would say, let your managers choose who they keep and who goes. And that might mean separating yourself. If you're an owner, if you're an executive, you might have some personal relationships and a manager says, look, I know this person goes way back with us, but I have people that are just absolutely better. And you as a leader need to step out, step back and say, I'm going to trust this manager because if this is as tough of an environment as it is, I need to trust that manager understands how to pick talent. Use the dark alley analogy. Use it. Talk about how tough it could be. Who do they want in a street fight? Are they going to bring the toughest or their oldest friends? Make sure that tenure is not the only way that you make a decision. In the credit crisis, we made some decisions to keep people that have been with us 6 months and say goodbye to some people that have been with us for 6 years. And we made those decisions in every office because we wanted to survive and we wanted the absolute best talent that we could get. And then the last thing I would say is you can't make promises. When you get into a crisis like this where the future is uncertain, you absolutely cannot tell your team this is the last of it. We're cutting as deep as we need to, and then it's off to the races. You need to keep everyone understanding that if we don't all get focused on what's in our control, on working hard, on battling through this might not be the end of it. It could be the end of it if we work our tails off and we get creative and we do some things we weren't doing before this crisis hits. But in no way, shape, or form should you say, hey, look, the worst is past us, let's get there. That gets everyone to relax. And right now, you need everyone on high alert and focused if you want to get through a crisis like this. I'm Ian Matthews. I'm with 5 on 4 Group. If you want to see more of our information on leadership, on training, on development with new managers and managers of all kinds within an organization, check us out at 5on4.group.